What's up, guys? I'm Uncle Freedom, coming to you on a glorious and well-deserved day off. How's it going? Today, it is time to take another step down that beautiful thing I've created known as the terminal effect, where I deep dive cartridges and rounds to a level that most will not, because this is the stuff I find entertaining. So, as always, like, subscribe, share, tell a friend, because that, after all, is how we defeat the algorithmic overlords that censor content on a regular basis on the YouTube platform. If you're looking to get in touch with me, or you want more information about the gear itself, or you have a question, or just want to know about the people I like, take a look down below in that description. My website where I sell absolutely nothing YouTube, violentalgebra.com, is where you need to go. Head over there, take a look, and get your questions answered over there. Huge shout out goes to the biggest supporter right now of the channel. That is outlastsupply.com. Fantastic people over at Outlast Supply. From your survival needs being survival food, prepper stuff, water filters, to tools that you can use around your favorite homestead. They're the people to do it, man. They're great people, fantastic folks. They have a service member discount if that applies to you. Go check them out, outlastsupply.com. I truly like those guys, and I appreciate them allowing me to do what I do here. So what are we going to talk about today? Well, this one comes at a request from a lot of people. I'm kind of working my way through those right now, but we're going to talk about the 30 Russian short. That was its actual first name, but you would know it more by its name of the 7.62 by 39. 7.62 by 39, or the 30 Russian short, is the second intermediate cartridge ever really designed and fielded after, of course, the 7.92 by 33, or the 8mm Kurz. This little short, squat guy right here. But it was absolutely the first widely fielded, and without a doubt, the most combat-tested round there is. AKs have been used for a long time in warring factions, people against people. They were once the manufacturing was set, they were very easy to produce. They would run no matter what, and no matter how you neglected them, they'd usually continue functioning. It's not always true, but it's a good bar nonetheless. Kind of like the 91s and stuff like that. They can go a lot of places and still be used. They are still in use all over the place. I know of every military guy I know can tell you about the time that we picked up like a legit Russian AK, and the thing was made in like freaking like late 40s. Stuff still works, but that is the primary round that was designed around it when we talked about the AK-47, and that was the 7.62 by 39. Now, while it says 7.62 in the actual name of the round, use not the same diameter bullet as a 7.62 that we would do here in America. Our 7.62 by 51, better known by its commercial name, the 308. The 7.62 in a round from an AK is actually a .310 to a .312313 diameter projectile, so it is much larger. I know that's only a couple thousands, but it is in the realm of things, it is much more bigger, okay? And typically what we saw in this weight was about 123 grain, full metal jacket, boat tail, lead core, mild steel jacket with a copper wash on it, a lacquered steel case. Like when you think of an AK, that's pretty much the mental image that you have. It was moving at about 2,420 feet per second, generating a pretty respectable 1,607 foot-pounds of energy. And it was chambered in legendary firearms. Like, there are firearms chambered for the 7.62 by 39 that are just about as just legendary as the cartridge itself. And those things are, of course, starting with the AK-47, the AKM, so the AK modernized, the SKS, or the conscript's gun, the Valmet, the RPD, the RPK, the Galil Ace, the CZ Bren, the VZ-58, the Tabuk sniper from Iraq, and even American companies got on board with this, with things like CMMJ MGs, the Mutant, the original Mutant, the Ruger Mini 30, and like things like the Desert Tech MDR, not to mention countless AR platforms that are made with this, and even the SIG MCX. Now, why would America take advantage of this communist round and chamber it in some of, like, even bolt guns, right? Like we have like Model 77s and stuff, bolt guns chambered for the 7.62 by 39. Why would they ever do that? First, we got to look at how he got here, right? Typical Uncle Freedom fashion. Let's take a look at what led to this point. So If we jump in the Wayback Machine and let's head back to 1943, the Council for the People's Commissariat of Armaments, yep, by committee, the planners there decided that the new cartridge would be an intermediate cartridge, undoubtedly, regardless of how it ended up, undoubtedly the idea taken from Germany's 7.92x33 or 8mm Kurz. They wanted that cartridge to be an intermediate cartridge with a designated like range space inside of so many yards. And they wanted it to be the standard round for literally everything. Now, to know a little bit about Russia, right? So prior to the 7.62x39, we really only had a couple of things. We had the 7.62x25 Tokarev, which is their handgun round, or the Papasha 41, and then we had the 7.62x54 rimmed. The R doesn't stand for Russian, rimmed, because it's got a freaking rim. Now that 7.62x54 rim was used literally in everything, right down to the garbage rod itself, the Mosin Nagant. Like that's what it was. You also had the Nagant revolvers, which weren't as big of a thing, but now we pretty much all moved over to this guy. And this is the predator to like the 9x18 Mag. So they had decided this is what they were going to do. They wanted it in literally every single rifle pretty much, from full auto stuff to semi-auto stuff to even light machine gun squad support roles. They knew what they wanted to get done. And the first cartridge that they actually adopted when the testings and the trials were done was the 57-N-231. That's right, that was the original name for the cartridge. And here's another one for you. It wasn't 7.62x39. It was 7.62x41. Doesn't have the same ring to it, but it's also what actually happened. Now, that round was a 122 grain flat base, that's important, full metal jacket round, doing 2,396 feet per second, 1,555 foot-pounds of energy. The design committee, politicians, man, they've been doing this forever. The design committee decided that the boat tail function on the round wasn't actually needed unless they were going to shoot at longer distances where rounds would no longer be supersonic, and they were designing this cartridge to shoot shorter stuff, intermediate range. They were wrong. After they did some testing, they found out, in fact, that they were wrong about the purpose of a boat tail on a projectile. I really wonder if the dude that said, we don't need it, it got disappeared. Like, I kind of wonder if that took place, because that happened back then. They actually, when they did it, they had to lengthen, they put the boat tail on, and they had to lengthen the bullet a little bit to do the boat tail, right? Because you can't just cut down the back. You actually have to make sure that the round is balanced. So they lengthened the bullet a little bit and got up to 123 grains. But when they lengthened that bullet a little bit to make it fit within all of the other design parameters they actually had to shorten the cases by 2 millimeters. The actual shortened case official spec was 38.7 millimeters, hence, boom, 7.62x39. The M1943. That sound familiar because you shoot the M43. That's the standard ball load. We call it the M43. So this is when we actually saw something else take place. We saw the steel jacket of itself, like on the projectile. It's pretty famous. That's one of the reasons like Tula and stuff are so cheap, is they have what's known as a bimetal jacket. That is a copper steel alloy jacket. They're magnetic and they wear barrels down. Now, what actually happened back here was they changed over to a mild steel jacket. Now, there's no official recommendations for it, but everybody pretty much comes to the general consensus that they did it because they could take advantage of the tooling that already existed for something like the 7.62 Tokarev, because this is a steel jacket. This is a hot rod freaking round, by the way. Like back in the day, like 1,300 plus feet per second. Like it was scary. And the new bullet was named the 7.62 PS. So the S that was standardized on the end of it stood for steel. Now the steel element itself made up about 50% of the total weight of the core. Hence the new nomenclature 57-N-231S, steel. The field tests that were carried out on this entire package took place from December of 1947 to full adoption January 11th, 1948. The final product, even though there's no denying that they may have taken the idea from the 7.92 by 33 or 8mm Kerrs, the actual finished round itself has more in common with the M35 Volmer than it does with the 8mm Kerrs. So we're kind of wrong. It's kind of like people saying that they stole the idea for the AK from the Sturmgewehr, when in reality it's an M1 Garand's operating system flipped over. The more you know. So our next big change that we actually saw with the AK round itself was in the early 60s. The Soviets discontinued the copper steel casing. Now, the copper steel casing, for those of you that don't know, looks like this. So this is 7.62 by 54. This is from, like, I believe 1951. I got a bunch of spam cans of this. But this is a copper plated, copper washed steel case. They went away from that and we moved into what we now know is the lacquered steel casing. Right, so that's how we actually got our steel casing itself. They went in favor of lacquered casing. Denotation for this cartridge was the 57-N-231SL, steel lacquered. Yep, they named stuff super simple, by the way. Moving on from that, around 1962, the Soviets moved on into a new realm of the 7.62 by 39, and they developed what would be known as the 57-N-231U. This is one of the coolest facts when I did research for this video. This was just so cool, and this fact was the reason this got bumped up. So the U variant, this is a .313 diameter, 194 grain projectile, doing between 971 and 1,017 feet per second. That's 398 to 446 foot-pounds of energy. That's cool, right? Did you catch that velocity? That's right. That velocity is subsonic. This was designed and meant to be used with the new PBS. PBS is like Cyrillic, like transfer of stuff. Noise and flameless suppressor. The noise and flameless suppressor and the AKM. Yep, you heard that right, man. Ivan was mounting cans on AKs and shooting subs back in the late 50s and early 60s. That's one of the coolest things. Like, we all know about the 9x39, right? Like, we know about the Ventores. However, they were messing around with suppressing and firing subsonic loads out of an AK back in the early 60s. Like, let that sink in. That's awesome, right? After 1989, the standard Russian bullet, the PS, began to be manufactured with a higher carbon content in the mild steel core, which allowed it to be heat treated. And it actually increased the round's penetration by 1.5 to 2 times, right? So if you got 20 inches of penetration, the hardened steel core was now giving us 40 inches of penetration. It's a big deal, right? So we're changing things up, right? We're making rounds that are designed to defeat armor. And granted, this already existed, right? So like this had been a thing for a long time. Like the Russians had armor-piercing variants of the 7.62 by 54. We had armor-piercing variants of it in our M2 AP back in World War II. But in an intermediate cartridge, this was really kind of the start of this. So what they actually did when they designed this is they used a tool steel variant of the actual core itself and adopted what was called the BP, but the common name for this round is the 7N23. That's the common variant. That is the modernized AK round, the last real modernized variant of the AK round that ever existed, the 7N23. So the 7N23 was designed and purpose-built around defeating armor. Whose armor, you may ask? Russians' armor. It was designed around beating the current Russian body armor at the time, which was known as the 6B5, and it could defeat that armor reliably in distances inside of 250 meters. So just the kind of the lineage of AKs and SKSs and the projectile stuff, it's really cool to see how this thing actually progressed. The fact that they were playing around with cans and subsonic rounds in the late 50s, early 60s is just wild, man. We talking about like suppressing an AK like it's the newest thing since sliced bread. Yeah, if that newest thing since sliced bread happened 60 freaking years ago almost. So what variants existed for that round, right? There was a ton of variants existed in the 30-06, which we talked about. The AK's got some variants too. So what we were looking at is the standardized M43. That would be the first variant we would see. This is the Soviet standard round itself. Steel core. The biggest drawback for this guy was the core was so solid in the M43 round that it didn't actually start to yaw to do additional damage until about 10 inches, and that was pretty consistent, which meant if you were fighting a really skinny dude, you didn't do anything except make a hole. So that was how that worked. The next round that you saw that was a variant that you could find is the Type 56 round. These would be seen a lot in like the little yellow boxes with the star. It said Norinco. Back in the day, you could buy that before they banned it. But yeah, no, the Norinco ammo, that was the Norinco version, the Chinese, the actual Chinese Communist Party's version of the M43. Then you had the 7.62x38, because some people got to be different. That's actually the Dutch variant of the round itself to go with their stuff. And then you had the M67. So the M67 went along with the M67 Yugo pattern rifle. It actually had a shorter, stumpier bullet than the standard M43. So what about Russia, right? Russia standardized loadings for this stuff. So you had the 57-N-231. That was the conventional bullet steel cord. Then you had the 7N23AP to go with the other 7N23. So now you have the 7N3AP, which used what was known as U12A steel. The actual steel component of this round weighed 56 grains. In a 123 grain projectile, 56 grains of your total weight was hardened U12A steel. That was the big deal that we had. That's that tool steel I spoke about a second ago. So that's that AP. You also had the 57-N-231P, which was the original tracer round, green tracer. Remember, bad guys use green, good guys use orange and red tracers. And then you had the 57T-231PN1, which was the new improved tracer. The tracer projectile weight was 116 grains for those two. Again, tracers were never really designed as a combat round. Tracers are designed as a marking spotting cartridge, right? Tracers work both ways. If you shoot tracers at something, everybody else can see what you're shooting at, right? We do that now with the IR stuff, and we used to have that edge on the battlefield before our government gave away all our night vision to people and just abandoned it and left. Even though I did Hands Across America for a canteen at Fort Irwin. I'm not bitter or anything. Just saying. Sorry, moving on. So anyway, the 7.62x39 has also seen that amazing success that I said, why would we ever build a bunch of guns for this round, right? It's not our round. Why are we building guns? Because it did not take long for hunters to realize that it was an exceptional deer and hog cartridge. And I will say, even living in Alaska, you would see the native Inupiat people and stuff, and they would subsistence hunt, which means there's really no sport in what they're doing. They are literally harvesting food. But they would use SKSs, and that's how they would harvest caribou. That was a thing, right? And I always thought that was cool. And if we look at the actual ballistics of 7.62x39, a 7.62x39 soft point has a very similar terminal effect ballistics as the 30-30 Winchester. So there's nobody arguing that the 30-30 is not a historic deer taking round, but we had that capability in this, right? So smaller, lighter weight, all that fun stuff. But why did we do this as Americans? Why did we just chamber? Well, you ready for a story time? It's because it was everywhere. It was literally every conceivable place you could find were spam cans of 7.62x39. God, I miss those days. I will tell you, as a young buck living in Alaska in 2002, 2003, that area, I was buying spam cans of 7.62x39, spam cans of 7N6.545, and spam cans of 7.62x54 rimmed. I was buying spam cans, 400 plus rounds per can of this ammo for like $69 to $80 a can. Let that sink in. That is insanity. Oh, and here's the best part. You could buy the crate that had 2 spam cans in it for like $105. So $105 got you 880 rounds of freaking ammo to go out and just run down with your SKS or your AK. You want to make this part even worse? Why did it get so popular? I was buying SKSs and Chinese Type 56s out of Cosmoline in crates in gun stores for $189 to $200. I could buy SKSs for $89. You could buy Mosin Nagants for like $58 to $60. I was buying Turkish Mausers back in the day for like $105. I was buying just bandoliers of 8mm Mauser ammo for $8 a bandolier. That's why America picked up this round and ran with it. You take the fact that this just mass-produced, milsurped out the yin-yang ammo, nobody wanted it really. We didn't know what we know now. Nobody really wanted it, and you could pick up just flats of the stuff for dirt cheap. Add to that the fact that this round was already capable of 30-30 style terminal ballistics on game. You had an excellent option for literally every single person in America, and we used it. Now, if I had a Wayback Machine, I would jump in that Wayback Machine and I would go back to some of these gun stores in the early 2000s and I would rack up just a crate of Type 56s and a crate of SKSs, right? These were brand spanking new, like arsenal new firearms, covered in Cosmoline, never had a round fired through them, complete with all their cleaning kits, you name it, and you could pick those up. Like, I distinctly remember walking into AK Shooter Supply, picking up a Type 56 Norinco. I think it was AK Shooter Supply. Oh, it may have been Sportsman's Warehouse back in the day. But I bought a AK-47, a Type 56 Chinese Norinco, a Type 56, and I bought 2 full cases of ammo, and I spent $269. Yeah. Oh, never mind the fact that you could pick up spare mags for like $4 or $5 a piece. They were just in a bucket up front. Like, it was wild. That was also when I bought my Saiga 12 gauge and 410. I had no idea those would accelerate in price the way they have, but man, dude, when people like me tell you that the milsurp game was awesome in the early 2000s, that's what I'm talking about. I would never go out and pay $1,000 for a Norinco AK, but man, I'd buy the crap out of them when they were dirt cheap. They were awesome for what they were, and the ammo was just everywhere. Dude, people would just like, hey man, you buy an AK, I'll give you a spam can full of ammo, because it was coming in by the Connex box full, and we were never going to run out of it until our politicians decided we didn't need it anymore. Yep, that happened. Same thing, 7N6, right? The armor piercing round that goes to the AK-74. Dude, I was buying that stuff up dirt cheap. And that stuff now I can almost sell like 4 or 5 boxes. No, I could sell 4 boxes and pay for the entire crate that I bought. It's wild. Now, I say all that to say there is some modernization that's happened with the AK round itself. You are not limited to just the milsurp stuff or the gold, the brown bear, the silver bear, all that stuff. Yeah, sure, for plinking, that's fine. But there are things. There are 150 grain soft point loads available from Red Army Standard, Barnaul, Wolf. There are tons of imports. Like this is IMI from 1980, so this is Israeli stuff for the Galil back in the day. So this is a brass case, fully reloadable, boxer primed, full metal, 123 grain full metal jacket. But you can also buy things like this. This is a Hornady 123 grain super shock tip. This is a devastating game round, and I can hand load these and buy these up. This is a factory built round, man. You can even get into some 150, 160 grain stuff and really have some fun. It has gotten some modernization. Now, granted, it hasn't seen the same modernized treatment that we've done with things like the AR, but it will never be as popular in America as the AR. But you're talking about one of the most battle-tested, proven rounds on the planet. They're fun to shoot. In the good old days, it used to be a lot cheaper. But with the cartridge being loaded by literally every single company out there, pretty much, with reloading components being made by pretty much everybody out there, and crazy stuff being available like that super shock tip from Hornady, the humble 7.62 by 39 punches harder today than it ever did, but it'll never punch as cheaply as it used to punch. That's it. So guys, I am Uncle Freedom. Hopefully you found this informative. Take care of yourself, take care of each other, and until next time, I'll see you later.